Well,
Hello.
Good evening.
Hello. All right, come on. You know you want to say hi.
Beth, do you know Victor Muniz photographs? M-U-N-I-Z.
Name sounds kind of familiar, but
Well, he does these constructions. He'll take a gymnasium floor and do construction, build a photograph on the floor.
ooh,
And I only ask because Princeton University is having a talk tomorrow night, 5:30. I thought you might be interested. You can send you a link.
well, tomorrow night we've got, I don't know if he's got scouts or not, but I've got Stony Brook tomorrow night. Hi, Sarge. Do you want to get in on this? I know, he doesn't jump. It doesn't go down far enough. Sarge. Oh, wait, I can't. Hi, Sarge. I don't know if he wants to go out, though. Hey, why don't you see if he'll go upstairs and go out? Oh, no.
All he wants is to scratch his ears.
How's everybody doing today?
Good.
This day I haven't been out of the house in probably a week. Couldn't enjoy any weather today.
And I was out all day today.
Did you get wet?
From between the store and the truck, yeah. I went to Best Buy in Morgantown this morning and bought a new iPad.
Oh,
Did you get one of the
Toy time.
12s that just came out?
iPad, not iPhone.
Oh, iPad, I'm sorry.
iPad. Yeah, I bought a new iPad Pro 12.9 inch.
I can't help it. Okay.
I stopped at Chick-fil-A today in Morgantown at lunchtime.
You and 1,000 others.
Yes, there was two lines of cars around the parking lot and building going in, and I can tell you this, that I sat in line about 4 or 5 minutes until I had my food.
Yep. They're good
I-
at it.
Efficient.
If the people running Chick-fil-A was in charge of the election, we'd have known who the president was 6 weeks ago.
Yeah, Chick-fil-A has it down.
They had 4 people standing outside taking orders. And before I knew it, I was driving away and I had food in my hand. I'm like, I go to McDonald's and there's 3 cars in line. I wait 45 minutes for a hamburger.
Yeah.
I was so impressed with how quickly they was able to get people through the line. Well done, Chick-fil-A. That's all I can say. That's all I can say.
They must be doing pretty good business because the two in the Greensburg area, it seems like there's always a line of cars there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, the other one, that Chipotle is building stores for online ordering only. You don't eat inside. You order what you want on your phone and drive up and get it.
Wow. Yeah, I was quite impressed with how quickly I went through there. So it's been a while since I ate at Chick-fil-A. I forgot how good their food was. So that was
Yeah.
a nice surprise.
So Dennis, I was just admiring your background. That almost looks like something that Marty put together.
Yeah, it is. Copied her technique.
Okay.
Some Phipps.
You did good, Marty.
Oh, thanks. It's fun.
Well, guys, I guess we get started. I don't. It's about 7 after. I haven't seen anybody else joining. So if anyone catches up to us later, okay. If not, oh well. So tonight is our final of the Photoshop classes. Thank God. I wasn't supposed to teach Photoshop, and I've been struggling with this, guys, as you know. So for all of you that have been helping, I appreciate it. Jim, I know that you mentioned you're going to do a little, you sent me an email and said you were going to do a little thing tonight. So I appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Sure.
I've got a video that Jim sent me a few weeks ago that I think is worth watching. The video is basically telling you what the difference is between levels and curves, which I think is a good thing to pay attention to, because some people tell you to use curves, some people tell you to use levels, and you can use them both and all that kind of stuff. So we'll watch that. I found a quick little 8-minute video on some one-click features in Photoshop 2020 that I felt was worth taking a peek at. And then beyond that, we'll go from there and see what happens. So, Jim, you want me to show my videos first and then you do your part after that? Or
Sure.
how do you, is that good?
Yeah, that's fine.
Excuse me. All right. Let's see, share screen, computer sound, and that button. And oops, I forgot to open up the screen that I needed. Okay, there we go. Do you guys see Photoshop 101?
Yep.
Yep.
All right, so what's the difference between curves and levels? And Jim sent this to me. It is not a very long video, but I think it's, never mind. It's like 12 minutes, I believe, if I remember correctly. We'll take a look at this. This video is unavailable. It wasn't unavailable a little bit ago. Honest to God, I watched this video this morning, or this afternoon, actually.
That's strange.
Let's see.
You want to try a search directly on YouTube, maybe?
Yeah, that's what I'm going to do. Curves versus levels. I'm not having very much luck with this one. Jim, it's your fault. Huh. Nope.
Is this one of these deals, Brian, where you might want to close the app and start over again, or?
I don't know. Skip ads. I don't want to, I mean, I can't close Zoom because that would mess things up.
Right.
You want to see if you can get that one, look that one up, Jim, see if you can get it to play. If you can get it to
Oh.
play,
Okay.
we'll let you share the screen.
All right.
That one is definitely not playing. And I literally just had this playing this afternoon. I did.
Okay, it looks like mine's doing the same thing yours was. I'm getting that spinning circle.
Well, all right. Well, I guess let me see if my other one will play that I had picked out.
That's strange.
Yes, it is.
Yeah, I tried it on my iPad and it's doing the same thing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
Maybe
maybe
it's
it's
just
just
a
that video
YouTube
because
issue.
my other video is playing, so I'm going to go ahead and pull that one up and we'll watch it. It's Photoshop 2020 tips, magical things you can do in just one click is what it's called. So let me share this screen and see how this works out. Yeesh. Okay, you should see a guy sitting in front of a computer. It's not me.
Well,
Photoshop 2020 has a lot of exciting new features, but some of them are just a single click and they can do amazing things. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to show you some of these unsung heroes. Hey Cafe crew, it's Colin Smith here from Photoshop Cafe, and today we're going to have a look at some of the one-click wonders inside of Photoshop 2020. So we'll do a quick kind of composite. It's not really about the art. What it's about is these cool little tips. So let's just jump straight in. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to combine a couple of pictures. I'm just going to take this picture here, drag it into the other one, and just release it, and we'll just put it somewhere in the middle. So the first one we're going to look at is if we go into the Properties panel. Properties panel is really amazing in Photoshop 2020 because it has so many cool hidden features. One of these is remove background. So if I click here on the layer, boom, the background's removed in one click. And then of course I could just kind of touch it up. Now if you didn't want to remove the background, let me just undo that. We could just simply choose select subject and this would just load a selection instead. All right, let's just go to the toolbar, grab our object selection tool, and I'm going to change this to lasso. Hold down the shift key and let's make sure we get her ponytail as well. I'd like to include that in the picture. And also this one, the other modifier key is the Alt or the Option key. If we click that, we can take away this hole. Great. And all we want to do now is just click on the layer mask to create a mask, and we've cut that out. Now, of course, we could go up into select mask and do a better job. That's a whole different tutorial. So I'll just throw in a quick tip on how to quickly clean up these edges. We can do it with the layer mask. Just choose filter blur. Just give it a little bit of a Gaussian blur. Let's just give it like, I don't know, give it 2 or 3 pixels. Let's give it 2, maybe even 3. Let's go all the way up to 3 pixels. Click OK. Now all we need to do with that mask is just choke it. Control L or Command L for levels, pop that open, and we want to get rid of this black area. All we do is just pull in there. Notice how it just goes away, same with the midtones. Click OK, and that fringing's now gone. All right, let's look at something else. Let's create a brush, and I'm just going to make a selection around these using just our regular tool. And if I want to save this, in fact, you know what? I'm going to grab this one. I like this here. I'm just going to make a selection around there, and then just choose Edit, Define Brush Preset. Click OK. Now we've got a brush, and there it is. Okay, so let's go back to our picture, and let's create a new layer. Set this brush to white, and I'm going to make it a little bit smaller. I'm just going to hit the left bracket key, make it smaller, and all I need to do now is just click once, and now I've got this splash right in there. So let me just hold down the Shift key. We're going to select that. We're going to move these over to the side there, closer to that window. And what if we want to put a splash on the window? Well, let's create a new layer and grab that brush again. And another cool trick is we can actually just use the arrow keys to rotate our brushes now. And if we hold down the Shift key, we can move them quicker. And I could actually go and add a second splash right up there against that window if I wanted. All right, so let's just make this a little bit bigger now. And put the splash behind her like that. Let's rotate it all the way around. And I'll hold down the Shift key to make this quicker. Let's put a splash on the other side. All right, so let's drag these splashes underneath our subject. Well, actually just do the bottom one. Let's drag it underneath our subject. And if you want to make it thicker, just hit Control J, and that'll just double it up a little bit. And let me just merge those together. Okay, so here's another thing that you can do with these, is if I hold down the tilde key, the brush, instead of painting, will take away. So I can actually go in here and watch this area here. As I go in there, see what it's doing is it's actually subtracting, giving us a little bit more of a random kind of a splashing effect right there with the brush. And if I was just to darken down the background so you can see what's going on. See what we're able to do very quickly there. So we've got all these other documents open. So generally speaking, whenever you work in a composite, you open these and then you start working, and then when you're done, you can go through it and you can close them. So another option we have is if we right click on here, we can choose to close others. And in closing others, it closes out all the windows except for the one we're working on. All right, let's look at another one. If I select all of these layers here, and why don't I just put them together? I'm just going to put these into a smart object. So just right click, convert to smart object, and then I can just kind of move these around. What if I want to make this bigger? So if I hit Control T or Command T, I can make this bigger. Now here's the thing. Notice how this transforms uniformly. This was changed in 2019, and it's a big deal for some people. If I hold down Shift key, now I can non-uniform scale it. But people don't like that. Some people want to just kind of change it. So what we can do is see this chain link up here. When we're in Free Transform, if we go and turn that chain link off, now it's non-constrained, and we hold Shift to constrain it just like it always did. So let's make it a little bit bigger. And let's have a look at how to change this permanently. If we go up under our preferences, go under General, you'll see an option that says Use Legacy Free Transform. Turn that on, and now everything is going to be the way you would expect it. Control T, non-scaled, Shift key scales it. So now it goes back to that behavior, just how it was before. Okay, so if I wanted to change maybe one of these water splashes, maybe I wanted to just kind of transform it a little bit, I'm inside of Smart Objects. I'd have to go into a different document to do that. But now if I right click, I can choose to convert to layers, and in one click, this puts everything back how it was with all the different layers in there. So that means I could go in here and I could use my warping tool, Control T, right click, choose warp. And now if I wanted, I could warp out my water or kind of change the way that's splashing right now. See that? Just make it different. And at any time, if I want to put this back into a smart object, all I need to do is just select the very top here and just choose convert to smart object. And boom, we're in a smart object again. And I can scale everything uniformly once again. So those are just a few little quick tips using Photoshop 2020 with some of the new things. I've done a whole series of videos on Photoshop 2020 updates and new features. Check them out on my YouTube channel, Photoshop Cafe, and also check them out at photoshopcafe.com. So thanks for watching. Which one of these was your favorite? Let me know.
What do you think of that one, guys?
That's pretty interesting.
I thought that was pretty neat. Those couple quick little things and little tips there was pretty good. So
Remove the background was impressive.
yeah,
Mhm.
yes, it was. I'm gonna try it one more time and see if it'll play. Nope. Huh. All right.
Hey,
Well,
Brian, just out of curiosity,
uh-huh.
wait, that last one was a YouTube video, wasn't it?
Yes, it was.
Okay, so it's not YouTube doing it.
No, it must be just that particular video that's having an issue, or whatever server that video is stored on, or whatever. So, all right. That was what I had 2 videos, but I only have 1 now. So, okay, Jim, it's your turn.
Okay, well, you know what? I will, but before we do that, do you want to do the search for the curves and levels and just see if there's another one to try?
Sure. Uh, difference between curves and levels.
Yeah, that's
Oh,
just
sure.
6 minutes.
Let's try that one. I don't think it wants us to know what the difference is between curves and levels.
That's amazing.
That's weird.
It's 25. That was 23 minutes. That's 18, 16.
It's actually working on my end. I found the video on YouTube.
Did you? That's where I'm at is YouTube, and it won't play.
Yeah, it gave me some difficulty at first. I had to do, there was the skip ads button. I actually didn't click it, and it just let it load, and it actually worked.
Jim, why don't you share your screen then?
Yeah.
Yeah, I could do that. I've never done it before, so bear with me here. Let's see. I have to go somewhere to. Is it
So
sharing?
it's at the bottom of your screen. You should see a little green button that says Share Screen.
Yeah.
When you click on that, the next screen that pops up, make sure you click on Share Computer Audio.
Okay.
Otherwise,
Okay.
we won't be able to hear it.
Okay, it says Open System Preferences, so I have to do something to enable. Let me try this real quick. That might be an issue. Yeah, just give me 1 second. I'm doing the authentication here.
Okay.
Let me cancel that real quick. I think it worked. Were you able to see anything?
No.
Okay, try.
Oh, here it comes.
Okay. How does that look?
There it is.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay, let's see here.
In Photoshop. Hey there, and welcome to Phlearn. My name is Aaron Nace. You can find me at phlearn.com,
Is that working?
Yeah.
where we make learning fun. And in this video, we're going over two of the most commonly used tools for adjusting things like exposure as well as color in Photoshop. And these are curves and levels. Now, most of the things that you do can be done with levels, but sometimes you want to bring in curves so you can get a little bit more control. Let's go ahead and jump into Photoshop and show you how both of these tools work. So here's our sample image. You can actually download this on phlearn.com so you can follow along. Now, to start off with, we're going to go to Layer, down to New Adjustment Layer, and we're going to go to Levels. There we go. Let's go ahead and hit OK. And we're going to go to Layer, down to New Adjustment Layer, and I'm going to go down to Curves and hit OK. So we have a Curves and a Levels Adjustment Layer. Now, let's go ahead and take a look at these two before we start. So we can see here with our levels, we have a chart right here. It starts off high on the left-hand side and kind of goes down to the right-hand side. Now, this is actually our histogram of our image. We can go to Window and then down to Histogram to see our full histogram, including color information. And we can see we have a spike on the left, and you can see it starts to go down as we go to the right-hand side. Now, what this tells us is that we have more information on the dark side of our image. So the left is for darks and the right is for light. So there's a lot more dark here than there is light. And that makes sense, right? We can just look at our image and tell, yep, there's a lot of dark information in our image and not a whole lot of light information. Okay, now here with curves, we get the same thing. It's kind of stretched vertically, but we can see a spike for the dark information, and there we go, all the way to the light information. So basically, both of these are displaying our histogram, which is the light and color information of our image. Now, some other similarities here. If I go to my levels, you're gonna see I have 3 different eyedroppers that I can use. And if I go to my curves, I also have access to those 3 different eyedroppers. I got a couple more, that's why curves is a little bit more complex, but let's show you around what those eyedroppers do. Let's go ahead and close out my histogram. Now my eyedropper will allow me to choose my black point, my midpoint, and my white point. So if you have an area that you want to be completely black, let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to click my black point here. We're going to click on something that I actually want to be black. There we go, just that top left corner. We're going to do the same thing with my white point here, and we'll just zoom in to click on that. I want that to be actually white. And then my midpoint, which will actually help white balance our photo as well. So I can click here on this target neutral gray, and you can see it helps the white balance. If I were to click on this red, it would try to compensate by making my image cyan, or if I click on this yellow, it tries to compensate by making my image blue, okay? So make sure if you're using your midpoint, your gray point, you wanna click on an actual gray area, and that's gonna help you white balance. So you can see just with a couple of different eyedroppers, I'm able to, let's just turn this off and on, color correct and exposure correct my photo, okay? And the same exact tools are available for you here in Curves, and they work in the same exact way. Okay, now let's say you don't want to use the eyedroppers. You want to use these control points, and you want to do things a little bit more manually. That's fantastic. So let's go ahead and reset this. Now with these control points, I'm going to choose my black point. So I can click here and drag this from the left to the right. And what this is going to do, keep in mind I have all this information here. It's going to take all of this information that's to the left of this point and make it completely black. So as I keep going, more in my image is just becoming completely black. On the other side, I can make more of my image completely white. There we go. And here on the midpoint, I can make my middle pixels either darker or I can make them lighter. And don't forget, you can use all 3 of these in a combination with each other if you want. Let's go ahead and reset that. Now here on the bottom, I have my output levels. What this is going to do is take my darkest point and make it lighter. Okay, we can take our lightest point and make it darker. Now you can use these all in combination with each other. So if I want more blacks, but I don't want the blacks to be as dark, I can do this. I can go ahead and pull my midtones a little bit lighter. I can make my highlights a little bit brighter, and I can make my highlights just simply not all the way white. So there's a lot that we can do here. Now, all of these things that we've done so far have just been in RGB, which is a combination of a red, green, and blue channels. Okay, so this is not color correcting at all. We're just exposure correcting. But I can actually correct my colors by clicking on RGB and editing my individual color channels. My red channel, green channel, and blue channel. So let's just jump into our red channel to show you how this works. You have the same sliders, but here you're going to be pulling the reds out of the darks, and it's going to replace them with cyans. You're going to be adding red to your highlights here. There we go. And here you can choose your midtones. It's going to push to the right is going to be pulling reds out, which is going to be cyan. So cyan and red are opposite of one another. There we go. And here we can see I can add red to my shadows and take away red from my highlights. Now, this can be relatively tough to color correct your image because, like, you know, who knows what, you know, okay, there. We got a lot of different sliders here, right? So you want to use these relatively subtly, and I usually use these for more like color toning rather than color correction. All right, let's go ahead and hit undo there. It's going to just reset everything. We still have our green channel to go over, so that's going to be more magenta or more green. And let's go ahead and reset this. Go to our blue channel. We're going to have more yellow or more blue. So those are basically the opposites. So red and cyan are opposites. We have green and magenta as opposites, and we have blue and yellow as opposites. So there we have our levels adjustments. And as I mentioned, levels are a little bit more simplified, and they do the job very well most of the time. Now, if you want a little bit more control, that's when it's time to use curves. So let's go ahead and take a look at these points here in our levels and see how they relate to curves. So we're going to start off with our black point here. You can see it simply makes more of my image black. Now here in my curves, that's going to be right here. I can take my black point and it's going to make more of my image black. So with levels, my white point, making more of my image white, that's right over here. White point, making more of my image white. You can see it looks the exact same thing. Okay, now here I have a middle point that I can make my midtones lighter or darker. Now with curves, you actually use that midpoint yourself. You can click here and drag it up to make your middle areas lighter, or down to make them a little bit darker. Okay, next with our levels, we have our output levels, making our darks not as dark. And here in curves, I can do that by simply grabbing this white point and dragging it up. So I'm making my darks not as dark. With our levels, I can make my lights not as light, and I can do the same thing here with curves, making my lights not as light. Okay, I also have control over each of my individual color channels, so RGB, red, green, and blue. So now we can see, just go back to our levels here, we can change our individual color channels. We've got 5 different points that we can slide around, and we've got our eyedroppers. So all of those different tools are accessible here with curves as well. So we can see that curves allows you to do everything that levels does, but we have even more control. So let's go ahead and jump in and show you how that works. I want to start off with this tool right up here at the very top because I think this is a very helpful tool for using curves. Basically, this tool allows you to not have to worry about this graph at all. You can simply focus on your image. Now, you can see as I'm moving the little eyedropper tool around my image, it's changing my little point here on the graph. If I go to a lighter area, it's going to go onto the right-hand side. If I go to a darker area, it's going to go to the darker hand side. So what this allows me to do is simply drag up or down, and it's going to make these areas lighter or darker. And the reason it's doing lighter or darker is because we have RGB selected, which is a combination of my red, green, and blue channels. Okay, so let's say I want to make my darks a little bit lighter. I'm going to go ahead and click here and just drag that up, which is going to make my darks lighter. Now we say, oh, that's cool, but it made this area a little bit too light, so I want to make it darker. So I'm going to click here and we'll just make that a little bit darker. Fantastic. Now these mid-tone areas here with our subject skin, I want to make that lighter. I can make this a little bit lighter. And there we go. We're starting to look pretty good. So what I did with this tool right up here, this little hand with the up-down arrow, it's basically creating each of these individual points along my curves adjustment. Now I can still move any of these points that I want to. If I want to do some fine tuning here, not a problem. I can come in and do that right here. But you can see what we got in this case is 1, 2, 3, 4 different points along the middle of our curve. Now, this is why it's a little bit more advanced than levels, because with levels, I only have 1 point, and I can't add any points. It's simply where do you want this little point to be? But I couldn't say I want it right here a little bit brighter and right here a little bit darker. I don't have that level of control, but I do have that level of control with curves. Now I can do the same thing with my different colors. So if I go to my red channel and I want to say, you know what, let's use our little hand tool, because in my opinion, this hand tool is a fantastic place to start, especially if you're beginning. I want to say, you know what, I want a little bit more red in my subject's skin. So I can click here and just drag up, and that's going to bring a little bit more red into my subject's skin. And if I don't want as much red in the shadows, I can just drag that down. I can go to my green channel and say, I want a little bit less green. There we go, in my subject's skin. And my blue channel, I want a little bit less blue in our subject's skin as well. So I'm simply able to target that light range and then make adjustments from there. So doing that, I was able to not only just affect the exposure, but also the color of my image. You can see here in the before, my subject had a little bit of a green tint to her skin, and in the after, we're able to color correct that tint, giving our subject's skin a little bit more proper color. I'm gonna go ahead and create another one to show you these additional tools, but I wanna keep this one on here because I think we did a nice job color correcting. So let's go ahead and grab another curves adjustment layer. We'll show you these additional tools. So we've gone over the hand tool, we've gone over each of the eyedropper tools. Now this tool just simply denotes that we can click on any one of these points here and make adjustments as we'd like. Again, in my opinion, it's more helpful to use this hand tool because it's kind of hard to visualize here, and as we can see, we've done quite a bit. But if you want to, you can just simply grab these points and drag them up or down. Now our next tool comes with the pencil tool, and this basically allows you to paint your own curves line, which is really cool. If I want to go up right here or maybe put a point up there, you can really start to do whatever you want. There we go. And you can kind of rough it in. So if you want to say, I want my darks to be darker and my lights to be lighter, you can kind of rough that in. Or if you want your darks to be lighter and your lights to be darker, you can kind of rough that in as well. Now our next point here basically just allows you to kind of smooth that out. So if I click here, it's just smoothing that out. So it's going to smooth out whatever I draw. So if I go, whoa, crazy, here I can just click and smooth that out to get it a little bit more how I'd want it. You can see I still have my white point is over here and my black point is over here. So I can go back here and move those points if I want to. And don't forget, you can hit reset at any point in time. So basically each of your eyedropper tools, plus you have your curve tool and your pencil tool. Now curves also has an auto. So if I just click on auto here, there we go. In this case, I think it's actually done a really nice job. As you can see with levels adjustment, we also have an auto as well. So that's a really good place to start, and then you can make some changes from there. Now in this case, I think that's done a really good job, but let's say I want to go ahead and do a little bit more color correction. This is where I could simply go to my green channel, okay, grab my little hand tool, and I could pull down the greens in my subject's skin. There we go. I could go to my red tool, pull down the reds just a tiny bit. It's allowing more cyan, and pull down the blue just a tiny bit. So at the end of the day, it does not matter which one you use. They're both great tools. Curves will allow you a little bit more control, while levels keep things nice and simple. So my suggestion would be find whichever tool kind of clicks for you a little bit better, whatever makes sense as far as layout, and go from there. But when using the curves adjustment layer, make sure to click on that hand icon. It's a total game changer and it makes it much easier to use. Thank you so much for watching. I really hope you enjoyed today's tutorial.
All right.
Great.
Thanks, Jim.
Yep. Is it back to normal for you?
Yeah.
All right. Awesome.
So when I worked for the newspaper, if my boss at the time caught us using curves for anything, he'd slap you with a ruler like the nuns did in school. You were not allowed to use curves, and nobody could figure out why. But I think maybe because it was just a little too much precision, or too much can be changed too quickly for him, for the newspaper back then. And that was a long time ago, you know. But anyhow, I thought that was a funny thing that we were not allowed to touch. If he's seen us with the curves open, he literally would hit us with a ruler.
How many times did you get hit?
Quite a few. Didn't hit you on the hands, though. He hit you in the back of the head with the roller. All right. And by the way, that video never did come up for me to play.
Well, by the way, I apologize. About 3/4 the way through, I'm not sure the rest of you heard, it was like double talk.
Yeah, I did.
Yeah.
Okay, what had happened is before Jim started his, I went back to YouTube to see if I could get mine restarted, and it didn't. And apparently, rather than closing it down, I just let it sit there,
And it started.
and it started. But it was funny. It was out of sync from Jim's, but I knew
Yeah.
something was wrong.
I heard it and went and checked to see if it was one of mine that started.
Yeah.
All right. Okay, Jim, did you want to do your tutorial?
I can. And by the way, so I don't forget, completely different subject. It's not too late to submit to me your list of accomplishments for the proposal to the museum. I'd like them tonight, if you will, but if you can't get them until tomorrow, that's fine. But to be honest, I think, well, a lot of you who are on the call have actually submitted some to me, so thank you. Okay.
I might have left something off of mine. I'll have to check the list I sent you.
What about it, Beth?
I might have forgotten to put something on mine,
Oh,
like one that
okay.
I was in like 2 months ago.
Oh, all right. Certainly, yeah, give that to me. That's fine. So I'll share my screen in a second here, but just in way of background. So this goes back to, I think it was the October Photoshop class, and Brian was going over the different use of the blending modes in Photoshop. And I've been wanting to try to learn to do that in certain applications and just never spent the time to do it. So it was the night of Halloween. I think it was the night of Halloween. There was what they called the blue full moon. And I woke up about 4 or 5 in the morning, and our bedroom window faces west, and it looked like it was almost daylight out. And I opened the blinds, and sure enough, I saw the full moon. And it got me wondering, I wonder where that thing's gonna set. So I went downstairs, got in the computer, and went on the photographer's ephemeris. And there's, I had in mind one place where I go quite frequently to take photos of the Westmoreland County Courthouse. And it's right adjacent to the Sunset Cafe, if you're familiar with where that is in Greensburg. It just gives you an ideal view of the courthouse. And sure enough, I zeroed in on Greensburg, and the moon literally was going to be setting right over the courthouse. So I got my camera equipment together and went out to that spot that morning. And I've never really done very much in the way of nighttime photography, but I did recall it was important to spot meter on the moon because it's so bright. And I was able to get some decent shots of the moon that way. But by spot metering on the moon, the rest of the background basically turns black on you. So I ended up taking a separate exposure for the courthouse itself. I'm not sure if I did one before the other, but anyway, I had 2 exposures. So that's where it came in to try the blending. So now I don't use Photoshop. I use this application, and Beth will be familiar with this. I know she uses it. This is On One Photo Raw, but the technique would be exactly the same in Photoshop. You'd open the 2 photos, the one with the proper exposure for the courthouse and the other with the proper exposure for the moon. So let me see, I'm gonna move you people out of the way here. Well, first off, can you see my screen?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, all right. So let me find out which one I need to open here. Well, you're still in the way here. By the way, we're going to be doing a presentation on using On1 Photo Raw for the December SWIG meeting. So I won't attempt to do anything here other than to tell you that what's really nice about On1 Photo Raw is it's a really nice combination of Lightroom and Photoshop, in that whereas Lightroom doesn't have layers, On1 Photo Raw does. So it's just a nice, and it's got all kinds of filters and stuff. You do amazing things with it. But in this case, I just wanted to show you. So here's my layer. Can you see my cursor, I assume?
Yeah.
Okay. So let me close off the moon here. So here's the photo of the courthouse that was exposed. And by the way, it's lit up in pink, I guess, for Breast Cancer Awareness Month it was. So I had what I felt was a nice exposure for the courthouse. And then I had a fairly nice exposure of the moon as well. But there was really no way to get a combined single exposure, if you will, to get a decent shot of the moon over the courthouse. So what I did is I put both photos in as layers and put the moon underneath the courthouse. And here's the blending options. If I would go to normal, with the courthouse on top, there is no moon. And with the blending in this case, what I wanted to do, made this really simple for this particular application, is because there really was only one bright spot on the moon's exposure. It was, in fact, the moon itself. So by selecting the lighten mode, basically all those brighter pixels of the image below came right out onto the courthouse scene here. So you can adjust, obviously, the exposure for the moon separately and for the courthouse separately. But it just shocked me how simple it was. And I know this is a real simple example, but if you do want to put particularly the moon on some type of a landscape, this is a great way for doing it. Before I thought to do this, I struggled with this thing. I knew I wanted to blend, and I've done some blending before on photos. I'm not very good at it, but I've attempted it. And I started off trying to make a selection of the moon and then to brush away the courthouse, if you will, to expose the moon underneath. And although physically that works, you end up, because it was difficult for me anyway to make a good selection. I ended up with a black halo, if you will, around the moon from the actual moon exposure. And it looked ridiculously terrible. But by using the blending mode, and I guess what I should do here there's no artifacts there whatsoever. It really came out really nice, I thought. So anyway, that was my little story about how to use blending for sticking the moon on something.
Cool.
You can ask a question, but I don't know if I'll be able to answer it.
Well, my question is, could you make the moon layer larger so your moon would actually look larger?
You know what? Yes. In fact, I did it. So let me see here. Hold on. Let me hide this. So I did use the transform tool, #1, to adjust the position of the moon on the photo. And let's see if there's, whoops, I don't want to do that. Hold on for a second here. So I scale, well, let's see. This says I'm scaled it down, a magnification. Okay, I did, to answer your question, I scaled it, and it is not a huge amount, but it is a little larger than what it was in real life. But you can dictate that by the, and again, I'm sure that Photoshop has similar adjustments that you can do. You can scale this thing and make it smaller or larger or smaller.
Okay.
And I'm sure that Photoshop has the same capability there. That's a finicky thing. And type it in. Good. Beth, can you type this thing in? Do you know?
I don't think I've
Let
ever
me-
tried.
It's not letting me select it for some reason. Well, anyway, it is scalable. Because that's strange. This is finicky. Sorry.
That's okay. Sorry.
So yeah, you can change the size or the position of the moon. The exposure of the moon that I took, it was probably somewhere over here when I actually took it. And of course, as it was dropping, I took other exposures as well. It just turned out from a detail standpoint, this one was fairly good. The one photo that, boy, I wish I could have done it on a single exposure. The moon actually came down right here in the corner of the courthouse. But again, I have an exposure of the moon that looks great, in the courthouse that looks great. But these little statues or these things here were the moon was like right behind them. And I just, maybe if I tinkered with it some more, I could find a way to do it well. But that would have been a nice shot with it actually overlapping the courthouse itself. All right, any other questions? All right, that's the end of my story. That's what happens when you wake up at 5 in the morning.
Well, you're a little bit more ambitious than I am.
Say, not for me. When I wake up at 5 in the morning, I roll over and go back to sleep.
Well, I normally do, but just seeing that moonlight out there, it was like, oh my goodness, this might be a good opportunity. And just the fact that it was like, that's where I go to photo the courthouse when I do it. It just perfect timing.
Yeah. Nice. All right, guys. So that concludes our meeting for tonight. Have a good night. No. I didn't have much else to talk about. What else do you guys have questions about or difficulties that you're having that maybe we can collectively answer questions for in Photoshop? Yeah, that was helpful.
Well, I've got a question. Does anybody else use layer blending for any particular reasons or applications that you find helpful?
I use it when I'm playing with textures. When I add a texture to something, because like you said, in On1, it's pretty easy and it does cool things. Because you can just slide down through the list and it'll show you what each one does.
Yeah. I've used that for textures as well in Photoshop, and you can do it the same way basically. Once you layer a texture over top of a layer, then you can use that blending mode, and then you can adjust the opacity of that blending of that layer to get your textures the way you want. I don't know if you guys remember a while back, I had a picture of It was a picture of a windmill that I had laid a texture over top of it, and it made it look like there was another world coming through the sky in the evening. It was a nighttime picture of a windmill. I don't know if anybody remembers that or not.
For that one, no.
No? Okay. That was a while ago. But that's how I would done it. I basically just took an evening picture of a windmill and then laid a texture over top of it and used a blending mode and an opacity to get a weird effect in the sky that actually looked like another planet when it was finished. So.
Well, I'll tell you what, Brian, I'll show you one more thing from a different night with that blending mode, if you don't mind.
Yeah, absolutely.
Let me share again.
I am 100% open to anything you want to show.
So this other one I cheated a little bit with, but let me see. So there was another evening, and it was, this was the next day. Okay, so the courthouse was on the 31st, and then on the 2nd, well, 2 days, for some reason stepped out my front porch at night, and it was cloudy, and there was a full moon as well. And again, same situation. If I went ahead and exposed for the moon, I got completely black. And if I exposed for the clouds and what little lighting was there, the moon just went completely blown out. So in this case, I cheated, if you will, and I'll show you why. So this bottom level, let me take this off, so that's the exposure for the moon. And then this, okay, hold on for a second. I'm surprised that this moon is on here. Well, I guess that's it. So the moon didn't look very good there. But when I went ahead and just tried to do that technique, this is kind of what happened, if you will. I couldn't, the old moon was still there, if you will, from the cloud exposure. But I couldn't get the separate moon exposure to go on top and completely cover it. So what I ended up doing was actually create another layer where I basically used the clone tool, and I cloned out the moon from that version of the cloud photo, so that it was no longer there whatsoever. And then I was able to superimpose my good moon shot over top of the clouds itself.
Cool.
So I don't know if there was a better way for me to do it, but it was a way to at least overcome the problem that I had with it. So that's the end of that story. It's my moon shots.
All right. Thank you, Jim. So who's got what questions?
Well, I have a question, but not about Photoshop, though.
We'll take all questions
Is
tonight.
that okay? Well, I'm struggling with understanding. This will tell you how stupid I am, but you know, when we went to back button focus, how does that affect the way the camera exposes, sets the exposure? Like, I'm getting confused when focus was with the shutter initially, before I changed it, and you half press the shutter, you're getting your focus, and the camera is also doing the exposure at that time, or locking the exposure. So when you remove the focus function from the shutter for back button focus, the exposure now is just automatic. It's not being set by the back button focus.
No,
Right?
it's still being set by the front button, by your shutter release.
Well,
In my menu,
but
there's no way to
not
link or unlink.
what's that?
In my menu, you can link or unlink those though. So that
Yeah.
might even be something buried in your menu.
Yeah, like the shutter now, I can't, I don't set exposure with the shutter button. That's what has me confused. So I'm not understanding how this is working now, I guess is what I'm trying to say. You know, like when I pick up my camera and it'll automatically set the exposure. I don't even have to focus, right? It's
Correct.
setting the exposure, but I'm not touching the shutter button or anything. So I guess what I'm wondering, like if I set my back button focus, I use my AEL button for that. So I don't have a way to lock my exposure unless I set it manually. Is that correct? Or I reassign my back button focus to a different button, like maybe my AF/MF button.
Yeah, you can do that.
So exactly what is my camera doing then when I you know, broke the link with the shutter button and focus? Like some cameras, isn't the shutter button setting the exposure too, right? Like, I guess what got me, I don't know if I'm making sense, got me confused. This photographer, he had a Nikon. I can't remember what the model number was, but he was showing how to, when you have back button focus, he was showing how you could lock your exposure by half pressing your shutter button too. You could, you know, set your focus with your back button and then lock your exposure with your shutter by depressing it halfway down. But that doesn't work with my camera. So I was just wondering how that was working.
Well, he has set his camera to do that in the menus. Okay, so I've got my camera in front of me right now. If I press down on my AEL button on the back to start my focusing, okay, and I move my camera around, no matter what I do, even if I press down halfway on the shutter speed, the focus or the exposure still changes based on the light that it's picking up.
Right.
So he has set his camera to lock the exposure on the front with the button halfway down.
All right. He assigned it to the shutter button.
Yes, so he's moved that exposure lock to the front button, to the front shutter button.
All right. So his camera wouldn't be, that's only for locking the exposure though, right? I mean, he doesn't have to do that.
No, that only locks the exposure. That way, if you're composing and then recomposing, but you want the exposure to be what it was in your first, you know,
right.
That's the reason you would lock your exposure, so that you can recompose and not change your exposure.
Right. So how do you do it? Since you put back button focus on the AEL button, how do you lock your exposure?
I don't care.
Oh, you don't?
No, I never locked my exposure to anything. If I want to lock my exposure, I move my little indicator light inside to where it's looking at, and I use a spot exposure. Does that make sense? So you know your little red dot inside the camera viewfinder where the camera's looking and it's picking it's using that as the center.
Yeah.
Okay, so I move that around and then I set a function button up on my camera so that I can immediately go to exposure or to spot exposure, and then I'll spot expose from that little point.
Okay, and you do that before you focus or after? Or
Either way, but
matter? All right.
I just why is it that you're trying to lock your exposure to something in particular?
Well, like if you're recomposing the
Okay.
shot, you know, that's what I was trying to. I don't know why I was letting this confuse me so much, but I guess when I started to really think about what I was doing with back button focus, I was wondering exactly what was happening with exposure, if it was tied at all to the shutter button,
Yeah.
you know.
Now you'll have to look and see if you can do that in your menus. I don't know if you can or not in your particular camera.
Yeah, that I don't know either. I like when I watched that video about that Nikon photographer, he made it sound like that was the way his camera was, that he didn't assign that function to the shutter button, and that's what was confusing me. So,
Yeah.
all right.
Mine is I move it around with the shutter button held down, which means it's not locked. So.
Okay. All right. Thanks. I'm sorry. I probably totally confused everybody else too, but.
My camera's always on manual exposure anyway.
Yeah. Well, that's what I was thinking about doing. You know, if I had a special situation where I wanted to recompose, and maybe needed to do that, I'd have to go to, you know, a manual setting. But I see what Brian's saying too. So sometimes it's like I go back to square one, you know, be shooting, and then I think about something, and it's like, well, I should really understand this by now, but.
I actually just went into my menus and changed it. It was a quick menu change on my camera. So I can exposure lock by holding the shutter release button down halfway.
Okay.
So it's probably in the menus if you want to look for it.
Yeah, it might be. All right. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe I missed that part. Maybe he did do that. Well, he must have, but it kind of made it sound like it was just a function of his camera. And then I got to wondering why it wasn't that way on mine, but I see what you're saying. You just have to assign.
I would say if he was a Nikon guy, I don't know what Nikon camera he has, but I of course am sitting here with a Nikon and I switch it to make it do that. So
okay.
I would say it was a menu feature that he had to turn on.
All right. All right. Well, I'll take a look at my camera and see, but that won't, if you do that, it won't affect anything else.
No.
You can just, okay.
Well, Brian, shouldn't she be able to set another button on her camera to do the exposure lock?
Yeah, you most likely can. It would be just a matter of looking at the menus and seeing which buttons are assignable. Some buttons you can assign different things to, some buttons you can't. So it would be a matter of seeing if she has a button that she could assign an exposure lock to.
Do you have the manual?
Yeah. I mean,
It makes for great bedtime reading. but there are little things that you can sometimes find if you're going through looking at everything.
Mhm.
I
Yeah,
usually
for
don't
sure.
find what I was looking for, but I find something else that's cool.
Mhm. Well, I just,
And I
you know,
forget what it was I was looking for anyhow.
so you think it may be better if you did want to do an exposure lock, it might be better to assign it to a different button other than the shutter
I
button.
think it would be really just up to you and how you feel, how comfortable you feel pushing different buttons while you're taking a picture.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Thanks.
Uh-huh. Good question, though.
Well, not really, but it was just something that was kind of bothering me.
All right. Any other questions about anything?
Well, maybe I have another question too. Um, that one of my photos that I put on the Photographer's Challenge for last month was sunset. Where was I? At Keystone Lake, and I didn't use it. I didn't have my tripod with me, so I was limited, you know, as to how I could take the photo. But I ended up, it had a fair amount of noise in it. But I don't think the ISO was really high, but I had a lot of noise in the shadow areas. Is there something that outside of using the tripod that I could have done that maybe would have been better? I would have had a better result with the sunset. I don't know if that's making sense, but I noticed whenever I would enlarge certain areas of the photo, I did have quite a bit of noise in the shadow areas.
So, I mean, basically noise is going to come from, on most occasions, it's coming from an ISO. So you said your ISO wasn't that high, but how high was it?
You know, I can't remember now, but I don't think it was like over. I don't even think it was 3,200. It wasn't.
Yeah, you're beyond the limit of what your camera can comfortably shoot.
Mhm.
And that's the reason the ISO doesn't seem like it's that high, but every camera and every sensor, you have to kind of get an idea of where your limits are.
Mhm.
So, I mean, the camera I have in my hand right now will do 25,000 ISO, but anything above about 330, 200 or so starts to see noise in the picture, in the shadows. And it's always going to show up in the shadows first. So you kind of have to get an idea of where that limit is for the camera, even though the camera will go high, and that isn't a real high number, but it's a high number for your camera.
Right.
Mm.
You know, some of the, like my old D300 at about 800 to 1,000 ISO, 1,000 was pushing it hard. 800 was as good as you was going to get. That was as high as you could go with that. No, it would go to like 12,000. But at 800, that was about the top of the limit for ISO. So you have to kind of get an idea of where that top limit is on your camera before that noise starts showing up in the shadows.
It doesn't seem to happen all the time though, which is kind of what had me, you know, confused. I
It'll
don't know
show, it'll
what.
show more if it's a little underexposed too. And even a half a stop can make a difference if you're on the edge of where the ISO is going to start to show it.
Okay. I bet that's what happened there because of it. I guess, I was shooting more into the sun also. So maybe that had something to do with it. Because I
Yeah.
probably did underexpose it.
There's still limits on dynamic range that it can handle in one shot.
Mhm.
I mean, digital's gotten better over time, but there's still physics.
Mhm. Okay.
Suzanne, did you try to do any noise control, whatever app you were using for post-processing?
Yeah.
It didn't work at all?
Yeah, it did. But I just wanted to know if I could be doing something better up front, but yeah, I did. I guess in a way, I should be feel good about even just getting the shot at all because it was dark, and outside of where the sun was directly shining. So the fact that I was able to pick it up at all, I guess was a plus, but I still had a lot of noise going on. Okay, thanks.
I don't know if it would have helped or made a difference or not, but if you possibly could have done an exposure for the sky, then an exposure for your foreground, and then do an HDR or whatever other type of blend you might, it might have given you less noise if you exposed for the shadow areas.
Yeah, okay.
But I guess if you were hand holding, maybe you just weren't able to do that anyway.
Yeah, probably not. And then I would have had to been shooting in, well, no, I may have been able to pull it off, but I didn't, think of doing it at the time. So, okay.
Okay. Anybody else? Any other questions? Comments, suggestions?
We're all quiet tonight, Brian.
I see that. I see that. I actually got my camera out and took 5 pictures yesterday.
Ooh.
Okay. I had to take 5 employee headshots at work. So that was my excitement for the week. Photography wise, other than several hundred pictures of cars that I had to take with my phone, but
well, no photos worth showing you at this point, but Pat and I did a hike yesterday. We went to Coal Run Falls, which is south of Laurel Hill State Park, maybe within 5 miles or so. And what's nice is the parking area, it just requires like a 10-yard walk to actually see the falls themselves. The bad news was because of the dry weather, there wasn't a whole lot of water going over the falls themselves. But it looks like it would be a nice location in better weather conditions. But we proceeded to take what was to be supposedly a 2.7 mile round trip loop hike. And from the falls in the parking lot area, it went almost straight downhill. And then it went along the Blue Hole Run for a while. And then it goes back up the woods to a local roadway and you come back to the parking area. But that trail was such a difficult hike. because of being fall, obviously, the trail itself was just covered 6 inches deep in leaves. And the trail was nothing but roots and rocks. I mean, literally the whole way. It was the most miserable hike I've ever taken. It was just terrible.
I've been to Coal Run Falls, but I've never hiked beyond like the falls area.
Yeah,
And when I was there, I think it was even kind of icy. It might have been winterish or something. So I had my dad with me because my mom stayed in the car with Nate, who was like tiny at that point. So
Well,
it might have been like April or something.
I said it was difficult hike. The other thing that, and I think this confirms it, is that I have an app on my phone that can kind of follow your route when you do trails and then show you a graphic of it. And so again, according to the literature, it was to be a 2.7 mile hike. My phone app told me we actually walked 3.7 miles. And when you zero in on it, you can just see it going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And I think it was because of all the rocks and roots that you just literally couldn't walk straight down that hike, that trail. You were just like zigzagging, avoiding certain features. So there might have been some other things at play, but it literally added a mile to the hike.
So you got your steps in.
We got our steps in, way too many steps. Pat's not talking to me now.
Hey, Jim, when you said you took the moon shot, what site did you go to get the location of the moon? You said it was Photographers something.
Photographers Ephemeris.
Okay, thanks.
And Ephemeris has got a spelling that it's, I think it's EPHERMIS. But it's a free download, free app to use. And you can put yourself anywhere in the world at any time of the day and any day of the year and any year that you want. And it will show you both real time and where, for both the sun and the moon, where they are relative to you and any other thing that you might be wanting to include in the photograph. I think there's some instructional videos on YouTube that kind of shows you how to use it as well. And then I think there's a professional version of it that can do some additional things, but the simple things about just picking a time and a date and a location, it will show you where the sun and the moon are.
Check the chat.
Yeah, I saw that. Thanks. Okay.
I've used it, so it's really handy. Like if I'm going on vacation somewhere, I'll just do a quick check to see, relatively speaking, where the sun and the moon are rising and setting.
Yeah, thank you. That sounds like it, come in handy.
Actually, since we have time.
Good idea.
Hold on, I can't share yet. Take me a second here. And I forgot, this is interesting. It starts you off in Timbuktu for some strange reason. But hold on here. Let me back to Zoom. Oh, shoot. Hold on. I'm doing something wrong here. That's weird. When I try to go back to the Zoom. Oh, here it is. Okay, hold on here. So this is the home page, and it starts you in Timbuktu, which is kind of funny, but you can go over here to the search button and type in a place. And so here's Greensburg, and here, I'm not sure why the default date here in my case is September the 27th, but 2017. That button takes you to today. So, and then this is the timeline, so you can adjust like what time. And let's see, where are we here? Where is, oh, okay, here we go. So if you can see those lines moving, the yellow lines are the position of the sunrise and the sunset. And then the gray lines are the position of the moonset and moonrise. And then the lighter is showing you where they're actually at right now, if you will, based on the time of day here. So what I ended up doing is if I zoom in on, this happens to be where I took the photo from. Go back out a little bit ago, a little bit more. So here's Main Street and East Pittsburgh Street in Greensburg. So this is the courthouse right here.
Mhm.
So let's see, I'll go back to the date that I took the photo. So there's the date that I took the photo, October the 31st. From this location, and there's the moonset. You can see it went right over top of the courthouse itself. So likewise, like if you wanted to do well, from this position, you couldn't do a sunrise photo at the courthouse, obviously. You would have to get on the other side of the courthouse and find, maybe like up on Seton Hill or somewhere, there's a view of the courthouse. You could go up there. Put yourself somewhere up, whoops, let's do this. So from there, and this particular day, you wouldn't get a shot of the courthouse, but you could use this, if you will, and figure out, you could advance like the days, like a day at a time or a week at a time, and kind of wait to determine where that sunrise would be relative to what you wanted to take the photo of. So it's a pretty cool application. And like I say, if you were going on vacation somewhere, maybe like to the beach or so, and there was a pier going out in the ocean, you could take this, move your location, if you will, to the beach and get the same thing as far as the sunrise and sunset locations. So it's a pretty handy application. And this version of it's free. And if you want to take it with you, I think you can buy an app for maybe $10 or $15 to put on your phone that would do the same thing. But the desktop app is free.
Yeah, it's really cool. Thanks.
Yeah, the app on your phone's $10.
$10.
I thought Ann's talk was good.
She did an excellent job with the presentation.
Good.
To be honest, Dennis, I wish she would have spent a little bit more effort on the particulars of how she judged photos.
Yeah.
I mean, she mentioned it, but not in a whole lot of depth. But overall, the presentation was good.
Mhm.
I was thinking if she actually would have had an actual photo and looked at it and critiqued it right then and there.
Yeah, I was kind of hoping that would be the case.
Yeah, I thought
Yeah.
he would show some of the museum's collection. But it was good. Interesting.
I'm sorry I missed it.
Brian's going to post it on YouTube so you can watch it,
Yeah.
or wherever he, yeah, I guess that's YouTube.
Yeah, not yet, but it will be up there.
Jim, when do you want these forest photos?
So it's the end of the month, and I haven't done it yet. I am planning on within the next day or so. I'm going to reissue the directions and the whole thing for those that might have lost the original email. But you have till the end of the month to answer your question.
Is that the tree photos?
For Hannahstown?
Yeah, I put a link on Reddit for that too. It's on the right-hand side.
Good.
Link to where you go upload them to.
I have to go find some.
Yeah, me too.
I know I have photos that are not black and white.
Yeah, that was one of the restrictions.
That's, yeah.
Yeah, the Phipps Christmas show opens up on the 20th. Unrelated comment.
Oh, and if anybody's interested, I don't know details because I haven't dared to look at the page, but I guess Lensbaby is having a holiday sale that I think started today. I'm not sure. If I look, I'll get something. So
So what you're saying is you're not looking?
right.
So Beth, and this is why, actually, this has nothing to do with Lensbaby, but this is what made me think about it. Several of you are into the crystal ball type photography stuff.
Mhm.
Hearing you talk over the last year or so. I came across an article on Petapixel either today or yesterday that I was going to have for the SWIG meeting later this month. There's some Japanese company that makes a lens attachment that literally has a crystal ball, a small one built into it, and you attach it to your camera. And so literally, rather than you having to hold the ball or have something, the ball to stand on something, it's there in front of your camera. No matter where you're pointing your camera, you've got the crystal ball in front of you.
I saw a thing that would hold the crystal ball, and it was like $45.
Wow.
It holds it's like you said, I think it attaches to your camera so that you don't have.
That's
Yeah, well, this isn't a real like full-size crystal ball. It's like that big, if you will.
Ah.
It's built into a, I'll call it a filter that you attach to your lens.
Huh.
Actually, since we have time, let me try this again. Okay. So can you see my screen?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Oh,
There's, it's
just like a filter.
it's physically attached to this ring. And what, so there it is there. Another, and then there's this, well, actually, I think that there's a macro lens that you can get to go along with it. And there's the setup. This happens to be on a Sony camera. They're showing it. Oh, there's on a Canon. Now this, I tell you what, this is, well, let me, hold on. There's just some examples there.
It is kind of cool.
That's kind of neat.
So now this is it. So the company is Suratam, and it doesn't say, if you go down to the bottom here, it says it's really not available internationally, but you might be able to find it on eBay or Amazon. So I didn't try to see, but I don't know if they, I thought somewhere here they had the price for it.
It's like $70 or $80.
Yeah. Oh wait, there it is. $70 to $80.
Okay, the one that I was talking about is called a Lens Ball Flex Arm. And it attaches like to your tripod, and you can move it, but you set the ball on it, and then you put it in front of your camera and you set it on there.
That looked like it was pretty cool.
Yeah, that looks neat.
Jim, did you get much response to your request for awards?
Oh, crap.
Sorry, for what?
For your awards, the juried.
Oh, the accomplishments? Yeah, at least a half a dozen people.
Okay, I haven't sent you mine yet.
You know it's due today, Annie, but I'll let you slide until the morning.
Okay, get it when I'm done. I've been a little busy, sorry.
I guess I don't have a list. I'm saying maybe a half a dozen or so people have responded.
Good.
Let me put this, it's a reasonable looking list. And it ends up extending one page, if you will. That's for the juried shows. And then the publications is about a half page of those. But the more the merrier, so if you haven't got it in, please do.
Okie doke.
Oh, and I mentioned to Brian the other night when he said he didn't have anything that was within the last 10 years. I'm sorry. But you can send me photos that have been juried from whenever. You know, if you had a photo when you were 10 years old that was juried into a show, you know, it occurred in 1970 or whenever, you can send me the photo because we're also having a portfolio on Google Drive that will go in with the proposal.
You want us to send those photos to you by email?
Yes.
And what kind of resolution?
They can be low. There's no need for them to be high resolution.
Okay.
And when I don't have an answer for low, but these people are going to be looking at it on a screen, so it almost doesn't matter what resolution you save it at. It does not have to be high.
Like probably what I had them at to submit them to whatever show, because all of mine that have gotten into things have been scanned from prints. So they're not.
Well, I'm sure that would be more
files.
than enough, Beth, yeah.
So Jim, if they end up choosing us to do an exhibition, does that mean you can only show your juried work, or
No.
show whatever we wanted? Or
Yeah, this is simply to get our foot in the door.
Mhm.
If they accept us for the show, it's our choice what photos we want to show. With I almost hate to bring up the exception, is that there is the theme for the show that we discussed the other night.
Yeah.
Do that again.
And those of you who were on the call know why I'm saying it that way.
I heard there was,
Controversy.
it was, I heard, let's say it was interesting.
Yeah, I guess that's one way of putting it.
Okay.
And
And if you weren't on the call, the the theme for the show is Laurel Highlands. It doesn't matter what year you took the photo, but the concept is that it's to show the wonders of living in the Laurel Highlands.
Okay.
So, you know, that vacation trip you took to Texas, it doesn't matter how good the photo is. We want your photos from the Laurel Highlands.
Yeah.
And the only reason we're being so picky on that is we thought there was a better chance that the museum would accept our proposal if there was a theme behind it, rather than just a bunch of random photos.
Right.
I think you're right.
Right. Hey guys, I'm going to show you something real quick. While we've been chatting, I did something.
Did a thing.
I did a thing. So since this is a Photoshop night, you guys see Photoshop?
Yep.
Okay. So you've seen that picture before. We've used it several times in our classes.
Yep.
So I pulled that picture up and I pulled this picture up, and this is for Jim because he was messing with the moon tonight or the other night. So I thought, well, let's see what we can do with those two. So I took this picture and I took from the original layer, I made a copy of that layer, and I wanted this sky to be different. So I made a selection of the sky area and did that to it. Just some basic, made a selection of that. I did I went into levels as we spoke about earlier, made some adjustments there, made some adjustments to the reds and the blues, and ended up with that. Just something different, a little bit different to what it originally was. So I said, well, I got to put the moon in there. So I went over to the picture. I made a selection of this area here, or actually, no, I just moved the whole picture over I grabbed this picture and drug it over and dropped it into here. And then I made a selection of where the moon was, and I moved the moon over here and I put it in the sky. But that really looks bad. I did an object selection as we seen in the video. I did went into levels and pulled the edges, and I did what he had mentioned about getting the edges and the selection better. So it cleaned the edges up, which was pretty good. We can, and of course these are JPEG, so it's not great, but I didn't mean to move that. You can see that it cleaned the edges of the selection up to where it's made it a nice selection, and did that. So then I went back to this picture and I grabbed it again and I drug it back over to the other picture, made another layer, and I wanted to just kind of put a little bit of a fog over top of this. So from this picture, I took this section here, made a selection of that part there. Once I made the layer in the one that I was working on, put a layer mask on it, and then I blurred the hell out of it to make it just a little bit of kind of an overlay of fog, just to kind of fog the moon up a little bit in that corner.
That worked good.
So I did that while you guys were chatting. I'm kind of thinking though that this down here probably could be a little darker. So we could actually I'll show you how I did the selection of an area. Just do a selection there. Oop, it didn't get the whole thing. There we go. That's better. And if you just do Control L, it'll work just in that selection. So let's darken that up just a little bit to kind of meet the rest of the picture. That's a little better.
Yeah. And like my moon was maybe a little too big, I suspect yours is a little too big too.
Oh yeah, it's way bigger. Well, I mean, you can see it's way bigger than that moon was.
Yeah.
But I did that on purpose, you know. But if I wanted to change it, if I go back to that layer, which this is the moon layer here, and I do a Control T, then we can do hold our Shift button down and make it smaller.
There you go.
Now with that, I think we need to move our fog a little bit. So let me move that fog a little bit and get it more up there like that. There you go. Anyhow, it only took a few minutes to fooling around. I didn't blend any layers, anything like that. I did change the opacity of the fog layer to 70% because at 100% it was too much. So I backed it down a little bit till I felt it covered a little bit, but not too much. No. All right.
Well, you know what's amazing about that, Brian,
What's that?
is the position of the sun and the moon being in the same quadrant of the sky.
It doesn't have to be reality.
No. I've got a picture that I took in Greensburg several years ago. It had been probably 10 years ago now or more. That I took of some of the architecture on the street walking down to the courthouse. From, like, we'll say from the museum down on the left-hand side, there's a couple pretty interesting buildings along through there that have some steep peaks and some different things on those pictures. Well, I took a picture of that one of the buildings in the daytime, and I brought it home and I looked at it and said, I really wish that that was dark. So I made it a nighttime picture. And then I went and I had some pictures of the moon that I'd been out taking pictures of the full moon, and I decided, well, we'll go ahead and put one of them in. So I added a full moon in behind the building. So it was, the moon was coming up from behind the peak of the building. And I thought that was pretty cool, but I said, well, it'd be really better if it had two moons. So I added a second moon to the sky from a different place. And it turned out pretty good. So I thought, well, let's go ahead and add a third one. So I added a third moon into the sky. And it actually turned out, I did a fog layer over top of the whole thing and got it nice and dark, and changed the sky from daylight to dark and added some stars in there. And when it was all said and done, it actually looked pretty good. But it was a daytime picture of a building in Greensburg that started with and became a nighttime picture on a different world. No. Anyhow, just fooling around, you know, we've went over a lot of stuff, and there's so much more that Photoshop will do and can do and is capable of doing. You know, we could do these 2-hour meetings from now until, you know, our grandchildren or great grandchildren would still be attending these meetings, and we wouldn't have covered what Photoshop can do. It's very extensive, but going through and learning little things here and there and picking up little tricks and stuff like that. And the more you do that and the more you practice it, the more it'll come to you whenever you start doing something. Oh, if I do this, or if I change this blending mode, or if I blur this, or if I make a layer mask out of this, it makes it a lot easier to do that in the future. And then, you know, just the more you do it, the easier it gets. So same with anything, you know, the more you practice, the better you get at it.
Yep.
So what else do we got coming up? We have a photo walk scheduled, guys.
Yep.
What do you think of that?
Cross your fingers for good weather.
Yeah.
I've been watching the weather already for that sign, for that that it looks like it might be a little chilly, but I don't think they're not calling for any amount of rain at this point. So
Where is that?
we are going to the Pittsburgh Zoo
Well,
on what date was it?
22nd.
22nd.
Monday,
It's a
Sunday.
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 That'll be a challenge.
So we're actually going to go somewhere. We felt that that was a good place we could go. And if you wanted to be further away from people, you can. You don't have to get too close to each other. So that'll give us a chance to go. So we got that scheduled.
Yeah, I'm hoping to be able to go, but I was informed a week or so ago that all managers will be starting to work 6 days a week.
Yep.
So I do not know what my schedule is going to be.
Well,
Uh,
welcome to retail.
yeah, I know. I've done retail before. It's just been quite a few years.
I was off today and spent 4 hours at work.
I was down in Pittsburgh. I went down to my brother's. Had some stuff to take care of.
So
with
you'll
them.
be 6 days a week now through probably mid-January.
Yeah.
Yeah, we start staying open on the 21st till 10 o'clock on Monday through Saturday, and Sundays now will be open till 8.
Yep.
So
It's that time.
I was off 4 Sundays in a row, so I have a feeling I'm not going to be off on a Sunday for a while.
Well,
So I was surprised at that I was off that many in a row. So
we'll see. Maybe we'll get lucky.
yeah, maybe.
Anything else coming up that we got some, just Jim's deadlines. Make sure you guys are doing those things. If you got some pictures of trees, get some in there. I jumped in the Google Drive and looked around. There's some nice shots in there, Jim.
There are, yeah. There's I think about a half dozen or so members have put some photos in so far on that.
Yeah, so that was nice to see when I jumped in there. And let's see, our next meeting is what, SWIG? Or no, next week. I don't know what.
Okay.
I'm confused by dates at this
Big meeting to the.
We moved.
I have wrote down here the 25th.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, when Brian, that.
We have a night meeting next Thursday, right? 19th?
It would have been, but it's been changed.
Yeah, I can't. I'm not available on the 19th. I have a meeting that had already been scheduled.
Okay.
So I moved the SWIG to the 25th. So it would be the Wednesday night.
Before Thanksgiving.
Okay. All right.
So next week we have our regular Wednesday night meeting on the 18th.
Okay.
And then the following week will be SWIG meeting.
One Wednesday night I can make.
Yeah,
Sure.
Wednesday the 25th. The
Oh.
22nd is the photo walk to the zoo.
To the zoo.
And then December, I haven't got the meeting dates figured out, but the SWIG meeting will possibly be moved again. I have to make sure. I'm not sure if I have a meeting on the 17th or not.
Yeah.
No.
I will know. I'll know after tomorrow night.
Okay, let me know.
Okay.
Okay, the 8th.
Needs to change.
Okay, the 18th I'll be able to do that.
Oh, and Annie, congratulations! You're still the vice president.
Okay. I'm real surprised.
We had a election, and I could not talk anybody into taking any position at all. So
Well, you guys really didn't want to give up your positions, did you?
I've been trying to for 15 years. Nobody will take it.
No.
I've had 2 takers. They didn't last 2 months.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, we kind of ended up back in by default.
Well, that's what you get for doing such a good job.
Is that the answer? I'll start screwing up right now.
Too late now, Brian.
Crap. Oh, Beth, by the way, thank you. Those work real well.
Good.
Comfortable.
That's good.
So I haven't, personally at work, I haven't actually been named the used car manager yet. But they took my desk and gave it to a new salesperson that they brought in. And moved me and put me in the office, in the used car office, and painted the office. So I'm assuming that I'm getting the position, or they're firing me, one or the other. I'm not sure. It is a little closer to the back door. I'm not sure. They may be just kicking me out the door. I'm not sure. And then they told me, well, you still have to sell cars. And I haven't quite figured out how I'm supposed to sell cars when I can't see the front door to see if anyone comes in to buy a car.
Where the heck did they move your office to?
The used car office, which the used car manager, usually his office doesn't need to see like the front door and stuff like that, because he don't care if customers come in or not.
Oh.
So they put me in the used car manager's office. So I'm assuming I'm getting that position, but I'm still waiting for official word.
Is there
So
somebody
how do you feel about that?
I'm happy if I get it and they start paying me. Right now I'm doing the job, but they're not paying me for it. So,
Well,
you know, I gotta get them to start paying me for the actual job that I'm doing.
This actually has a salary with it, right?
Yeah, it would be a fairly good salary. So yes.
That's great, Brian.
Yeah.
Yep.
So he'll at least have a steady paycheck.
Yes. If you guys don't know, car salesmen do not make a lot of money anymore. They used to years ago, but now it's not you don't make a whole lot of money selling cars. And there is no guarantee as to what you get paid. So.
Well, I don't know about the salesman, but it seems to me that the new car prices, there's hardly any margin anymore.
You're right. And to sell new cars, you have to almost sell them underpriced to get people in the door to buy them. So almost every new car sells, we either almost break even or lose money on.
Yeah.
So you have to make money on the used car side. That's the used car side is what keeps that, and service is what keeps a car dealership open. So
That's because it's a small mortgage.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah, in a week or so, I need to bring mine in to get the oil changed. I'm down to about 23%.
No, you don't need to bring it in until you get to 10.
No, okay, well, then I've got a month or so to go.
And around 10 or between 7 and 10, it'll tell you to make an appointment.
Oh, okay. Well, then I'll let it go.
Yep.
It'll be a little while yet.
Yep. Don't change it early. There's no need to.
Okay. Well, then I won't come see you next week.
You can still stop by and say hi if you want, but
Well, yeah, it's a roundabout way to go, but okay.
it's a long drive. It's a long drive to say hi, but you know, hey.
A little bit of a drive.
All right. Well, we're at 9 o'clock, guys. If there is no other questions, we can call it an evening. Thank you. All those that participated, all those that had questions, and those that answered questions. I appreciate everything that everyone did for Photoshop and Lightroom. And I can't think of anything else to say.
yeah, we'll see you.
Thank you, guys.
All
Good
right.
night, Dennis.
Brian.
Good night, everybody.
Thanks.
Good night, all.
I do need to talk to you. Can you give me a call?
Sure.
All right. Thanks.
Okay,
All right.
Good night.
Bye.
Thanks.
Good night.
Thanks, Brian.
Yep.
Bye.